Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Jon Ferrian Live. We are here tonight for an incredible episode. You guys, tonight, I don't know, there's certain episodes that I like to refer to as epic sodes because I'm just going to call it like Babe Ruth does right from the beginning is we have an amazing story that all of you guys and gals out there will want to hear and to share this out. And so as you come in, please come in and share this out and get it out on your personal pages. Share it out to your, snowmobile pages, any avalanche awareness safety pages. We've got some amazing things we're going to talk about tonight. So really, please come on in and let us know where you're watching from. So Tia Smith is here from Santa Barbara. She knows the routine. She's here every week. But what I'd like all of you to do is share the show. And as you share the show, feel free to tag either Ben or David Mcclure, or if you want, Rob Kincaid too. The story tonight is all about sharing Rob's story and everything that happened the day of the accident. And we're going to talk about the sweepstakes and the money that we're raising for the family, the Kincaid family. So come on in, tune in, share this out. This is a really important episode that I want all of you guys to go in. So you guys are hearing the Live Large music in the background. I want to remind anybody who maybe has not seen this show before, I've got the shirt, the hashtag, Jon Ferrian Live down below here. What Live Large is what this show is all about. It's living life to the fullest. It's making the most of every day. And the biggest one, make a difference to others, right? And so here we are tonight, sharing a story that's going to make a difference to a lot of people out there. So please come on in, tune in, and just for sharing the show tonight, you will be in to win awesome prizes from our show sponsors. So Fly Racing is our show sponsor tonight, and we're giving away a Fly Racing windproof jersey, $75 value. Just for sharing the show out, you're automatically in to win to get this out. So if you share it out, share it in a public, share it publicly so I can see it. That's the way you'll get in to win. So let me go ahead and tune the music down here and just remind you guys we've got David Mcclure and Ben White coming on, and I'm going to go ahead and drop the veil here in 3, 2, and 1. All right. Oop, we've got a couple of pictures there. So actually the first picture there, David and Ben, they can't see you yet because I still have this amazing picture up. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but the picture of the Rob Kincaid tribute sled, that's part of a sweepstakes that we're going to talk about tonight. Tune in and we're going to talk through about this here as well too. So let me drop that. And now we're going to show you guys the Ben and Dave show. How's it going, guys?
Pretty good. What's up?
Not much, man. So, Dave, holy smokes, we finally got you on the show. I've been so excited to get you on. Honestly, even before the accident with Rob, like I used to have a lot of fans that were like, we got to get one of the Articat guys on there. Bring Dave Mcclure on. Bring Dave on. Bring Dave on. And so I think we pinged you a while back, and our schedules never aligned. And here we are, finally making it happen. So I'm grateful to have you on the show tonight. Say hi to everybody watching.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be on here, and it's my first podcast I've ever done. But it's just like the whole snowmobile industry, the career that Rob and I had. We just jump into it head first and just go for it. So.
Yeah, you just jump in, pin the throttle, and ask questions later, right?
Right.
Awesome. So Ben, let's do a little introduction for you too, and I think we'll come back to you, Dave, and think a little bit about maybe if someone maybe doesn't yet know who you are. Give us a little background on you in a few minutes, but let's go to Ben first. And so Ben, you currently work for Articat. What's your role at Articat? And tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having us, John. This has been it's going to be a pleasure being here. We're really excited to be talking about not only Arctic Cat, but the initiatives that we got going on this year. And but yeah, my name is Ben White. I work with Arctic Cat. I'm the content manager there, so I'm in charge of managing all of our content that you see on social and on the web, all of our digital platforms. Then also help manage all of our Black Cat athletes like Dave Mcclure and Riley Kincaid and Maverick Walker and Kyle Saxon, all those guys that are sending it big and riding in the backcountry and promoting our brand. So, it's a pretty fun job. Get to experience pretty cool things with pretty cool people. So glad to be here.
So I got to ask, how does a guy get a cool gig like that? Like, give me a little background on what led up to you getting this role with Articat, because as far as I can tell, it's probably a dream job for many people who watch this every day. It's like, holy smokes, I get to work with marketing and social media and all that stuff for a brand like Articat. Like, tell me more. Like, how'd you get into that kind of a role?
Yeah, it's been a dream come true, really. Years ago, been, I would have never thought I'd be here. And it's all just kind of happened, hard work and dedication, and having a passion for the sport and an industry, and always driving for something better. That's kind of what led me here. Arctic Cat and this industry in general is just always evolving and always looking for new talent. And so just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and had the right skills to make things happen and make things come together. So that's kind of what led me here. I don't know if we got a whole, enough time to go through the whole story, but
No, it's okay.
yeah, in a nutshell, marketing has brought me here.
Yeah. So here's what I want to know, which is what everybody else wants to know is, I get hit up on this all the time because people, seeing the show and the podcast, they want to kind of like, man, I want to get a career in the snowmobile industry. And, I keep trying to tell everybody, like, I don't. Like, I've got a day job. I work at Microsoft during the day, and I, do kind of this hobby stuff, in the evenings on Sunday nights with the podcast. And then I ride on the weekends. I'm involved in clubs. I'm on the board of directors for the Avalanche Center here in the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, with the Northwest Avalanche Center, State Snowmobile Association, WASA. So it's all kind of a volunteer role, but I get active in it. So people are always like, man, I wish I could work in the industry. And what I keep telling everybody is, like, sometimes it's a double-edged sword. Like, you get to work every day around snowmobiling, but sometimes you're working the hardest when you wish you were probably out riding. Can you comment on that? Like, what's it like for you? Are you getting a lot of riding in when you're in your job, or is it work, 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 and then hopefully you get to go riding once in a while?
Yeah, it's really hard to separate work from play in a role like this. So, we definitely get some riding in, but I live in Augusta, Georgia, full time year round, and so the amount of riding I get in is limited to
Yeah.
compared to people like Dave and Riley and guys that are fortunate enough to live out here in God's country.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just get to come visit every once in a while, but it's still fun. You get to come out here and ride as much as we can, and make the most of it when we can. So
awesome. Well, let's kick over to Dave, and Ben, we'll come back to you in a minute, and we're going to talk a little bit about, the passion that Arctic Cat has for avalanche safety and education, and kind of the whole topic of, what my show revolves around stuff too. So we'll come back to you for that. But Dave, give us kind of that, hey, maybe someone coincidentally maybe hasn't figured out who Dave Mcclure is yet. Give us a little background on who's Dave. Are you a husband? You a father? What's your day job? Like, how'd you get into an Arctic Cat, Black Cat ambassador role? Like, give us that little rundown for the next 5 minutes, if you would.
Yeah, so I'm married. I have 3 kids. They're 8, 5, and 2. And I have a landscape company, so I'm a landscape contractor all summer long. It was funny, when I was like 18 years old, I was debating on what I wanted to do for my career, and I was either going to go into the Air Force or be a snowmobile racer. And I looked into the Air Force, and that was year round. Like, I couldn't take the winters off.
Yeah.
So then I was like, if I'm a landscape contractor, then I got all winter off. So
that's awesome.
But then ever since 2006, I guess, I started hill climb racing.
Okay.
And I started snowmobiling when I was just a little kid, but I couldn't afford sleds, and so as soon as I was done with college, I bought a brand new snowmobile, and it was my dream to race hill climbing, and
That's awesome.
So I started racing, and I guess my second year of racing, I got picked up on the Arctic Cat team.
Nice.
And I think that year I won a points championship in the semi-pro class. And the following year, I went pro hill climbing and just started kind of working my way up the ranks as a hill climb racer, and so far that I kind of got noticed by a few magazines, and then Arctic Cat really didn't even have like a backcountry team or anything back then, but the marketing team kind of took notice of what Rob and I were doing, and so then we started working with marketing, and I think that was about 2012. I've been working with marketing ever since. It's been an awesome dream. I mean, I've been able to travel the world riding snowmobiles and get to meet people from all over the world that just are as passionate about snowmobiling as I am. And Japan, Iceland, Sweden, Norway, Canada, and a lot of those places have been multiple times. So it's been a good ride.
That's
So
awesome. That's awesome. And I'm kind of having flashbacks here of, I've followed you, Dave, and Rob, obviously, for a long time. And at some point, and not too distant, far ago, I thought I saw a video that said that, was it you and David, or you and Rob, that had proposed the Black Cat idea, or like, there was this idea of like proposing as like a team, kind of to the Arctic Cat team. Can you elaborate on that, or do I have my facts wrong? Again, it was just a distant memory here from a video I thought I watched. So.
I don't think that was the case.
I make stuff up all the time, so feel free to just
Yeah,
call BS on me if you want to. So,
yeah. No, I mean, we were just going for it. I think
yeah,
one of the guy that had Ben's job before, Cale Wayner, I think he came up with the idea, and he had the idea that we'd all kind of be a team in the backcountry, and
yeah,
it's been fun. I mean, that first destination elevation video that we did was unreal. Helicopters, filming helicopters with us in it, and I mean, it's been a really cool experience being involved with Arctic Cat and all the different guys with marketing that I've been able to meet. So.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And Ben, before we go over to you, kind of share a little bit more about the kind of what Arctic Cat's doing around avalanche awareness and safety and why it's so important to them. What I want to remind everybody is, anybody who's watching, we have a great live viewer list here going. I think we're at about 67 live viewers. And again, that's a number that's always fluctuating up and down. People are coming and going. But what I'll ask everybody to do is, as you're watching right now, the next part of the video here is where it's going to get, pretty amazing. We got some amazing stories we're going to be sharing here. Would ask that you guys, if you haven't already, share the show out, share it on your personal page. If you have a Snowmobile Club page, maybe it's, network pages like 2.0, Sled Addicts Nation, whatever, across the country. There's a lot of folks who would love to hear this story. And, David, you shared with me that I know you'd like to share the story of the day the accident happened tonight. And to our knowledge, that's probably the first time the story will be shared publicly, right? From your point of view, for sure. And we're going to get into that here in a little bit. And so we just encourage everybody to kind of just help get this message out and kind of make sure that the story doesn't, go on deaf ears. We want to make sure that people get to hear this message and understand, we're all human. We all, can make a difference by sharing our stories of things we've experienced and what we've learned, and try to make a better impact on the sport that we all love. So we'll come back to that as people are sharing it out. But Ben, so in our conversation earlier this week, you shared with me, man, one of the messages I want to get out is helping the public understand how passionate Arctic Cat is about, backcountry safety, avalanche education, just awareness, making sure everybody has a round trip, like every trip should be a round trip for everybody. And, kind of elaborate on that for us, if you would, and what Arctic Cat's been up to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Arctic Cat, being in this industry, you always have to be an ambassador for safety in the backcountry. This sport has inherent risks, and I think it's up to the manufacturers to be doing their due diligence and to be promoting goodwill across the community. And Arctic Cat has definitely been doing that, I feel like, for a long time. I just don't know if it's been as public knowledge. We've always been donating vehicles to search and rescue communities and outfits that are doing that sort of thing. So there's things that we've been doing in the background behind the scenes, but I think this year we've got a platform to be able to really share this message and really communicate why this is so important. And so this year Arctic Cat has really taken the step forward and utilizing our ambassadors and our outlets to push this message forward. There's dangers in the backcountry that everybody needs to be aware of. And it's not like typical trail riding. It's a completely different game. And the dangers are real. The dangers are there. And, the first step to avoiding them is to being aware of them.
Yeah.
And so we've been fortunate enough to have a great outlet using the Black Cats. This team of Black Cats, like I mentioned earlier, obviously Dave, Riley, which is Rob's son,
Yeah.
Kyle Saxton and Maverick Walker. These guys are, some of the most well-known backcountry riders in the snowmobile community. And so there's really no better, option of communicating this message than by utilizing these ambassadors to do that. And so, the first thing we did this year before really any of us got on the snow was took an AIARE 1 avalanche class. That was really important for us to do. I think, I don't want to speak for Dave, but I think it was important for me to be able to get back on the snow and feel comfortable on the snow. Last year was a really, really rough year. And I think the only thing for us to do was to get the education needed. We all had, Dave especially, everybody had knowledge of how to operate in the backcountry and things to look out for, but just goes to show, anything can happen. And so having the knowledge and the experience necessary to cope with those things when they happen can make the difference between a one-way trip and a round trip.
Okay, that's great. So I'm actually going to check in here with a comment from the audience, and I'm just going to read it as is. And so if it's accurate, we'll try to answer it. If it's not, then we'll just say we'll kind of follow up with them later. But this is a question for Dave. It says, and again, I don't know this to be true, so Dave, you can confirm or not. Dave, you put out some beacon check stations out in the areas where you and Rob were used to ride or do ride. Where you still ride, of course. Who maintains these? Will AIARE look after them, or is the sled club in the area going to do it? So I know for sure that's not AIARE's role. That's not really what they're about, but they're about getting the training and the education out there to the educators to kind of get out there too. But Dave, I'll have you comment on that. If I'm not aware of that, so I'll let you kind of comment if that's a statement that's accurate or not.
Yeah, so I worked with my friend who actually worked for the Forest Service in our local district, and I took that role on. I'm going to maintain them.
That's
as
awesome.
Far as and it's easy for me. They're the farthest one away is 20 minutes from my house, so one's 10 minutes from my house and the other one's 10 minutes from my house. So yeah, I'm going to maintain them. So.
That's awesome. Thanks for doing that. Those are important tasks to take on for each of our community. I know I've seen more and more of those around the country everywhere I've ridden. So cool. So Ben, I know one thing that you guys are also doing, and I'm sure Dave, you had a hand in this as well too. And one thing we want to really make sure we highlight tonight is the sweepstakes or the raffle. What is it? It's a fundraiser giveaway of a Rob Kincaid tribute sled. And why don't you just verbally tell us about what's going on there? And as we do that, I'm actually going to put the picture of Rob's sled, the tribute sled, up again, so people can see it as you're talking about it. So people won't be able to see you, but if they can hear your voice over this picture that we have there. So this sled is what we're giving up. It's like you can buy raffle tickets or you can buy tickets to purchase, to get a chance to win this, right? But tell us what that's all about, Ben.
Yeah, so this was a great idea I think Dave had actually to build this sled in memory of Rob. Rob and Dave both each year for Heydays, if you're familiar with Heydays,
Yeah.
They would build these mod sleds, right? And they'd display them at Heydays. It'd be a big reveal, and it was actually one of the biggest draws to our booth than anything else that we had there. Getting to see Rob and Dave's mod sleds for the years. So that was really cool. So Dave had this idea, why not build his sled and build it the way that he always wanted to build it. He had in his mind this dream sled, the best of the best, the
That's awesome.
cream of the crop, the most epic sled that you could ever think of. And so Dave and I and Jason Nethercott got together and we started brainstorming about how to put this thing together, what pieces to put on it. Dave's got more information than me on exactly what is on this sled, so I'll let him kind of talk about each particular piece. But working with Octane Inc. and all the different sponsors, we were able to put together this masterpiece. I mean, it really is.
It is beautiful.
Look at the attention to detail on this sled. I mean, Jason was able to pull this thing apart. I mean, if you know anything about Jason, he's been Rob's mechanic, ever since Rob was Rob, And so he pulled this thing down to the nuts and bolts, got these things powder coated gold to match the wrap, and Octane did a killer job matching the wrap to the powder coated parts. And there's a ton of sponsors that really came together to make this thing what it is right now. So I'll let Dave actually talk about, if you want, the individual components that are on this sled, because it's more than just a gold sled. It's something pretty special.
Yeah, let's give some love to the sponsors as you talk us through this, Dave. So go ahead. And everybody can still see the picture of the sled up there right now. So I think it's amazing to be able to have you talk about the sled as the people are looking at the image of it. So
nice, perfect. Yeah, Speedworks was one of our biggest sponsors forever, ever since both Rob and I started racing. And so it's got a Speedworks pump gas supercharger. That in itself is like $7,500 value.
Wow.
And Rob and I, we've ran those superchargers forever. We kind of actually pioneered that whole supercharger movement. It was fun because a lot of people told us superchargers will never work on two-stroke snowmobiles,
Oh yeah.
and we took that as like motivation.
Don't tell me
And
what I can't do, right?
exactly. One of my favorite videos we did, I think I said someone told us they wouldn't work. I'm here to tell you they do work. So yeah, Jeremy at Speedworks and Steve, they were super gracious to donate, hugely with the supercharger. Octane Inc. Brett at Octane, I can't say enough good about him. He has helped so much with everything for both of our careers, and even after Rob was gone, he was my go-to guy. He was constantly making images and posters and stickers and T-shirts and everything, you name it. Well, on this sled, Brett, we worked all summer long, designing the wrap and getting the colors dialed. And I would send paint powder coat swatches to him because we weren't gonna not have the powder coat match the wrap. And it's got a gold metal flake metallic that's never been used in the snowmobile industry. So yeah, Octane Inc. They did the wrap. Ice Age was a great sponsor of Rob's and I's. They donated some spindles. They did a really cool thing last after Rob passed, and they offered up some special red spindles that were engraved with Rob's logo. And I think they donated all the proceeds to those snowmobiles, or from those Ice Age spindle sales to Kim and Rob's family. So Ice Age Elevate kit on this snowmobile. It was really cool because Rob and I, we worked a lot with Arctic Cat and their accessories department. And we helped develop the front bumper that's on this snowmobile. We helped develop the running boards on this sled. The rear bumper had a little bit to do with the seat, and billet pole handle and gas cap. So that's one of the coolest parts about being involved with Arctic Cat and this deep into the industry is we can have conversations about what we want to see on the sled, and Arctic Cat's they listen, and we've been able to develop those. So all those Arctic Cat accessories, starting line products, donated Powder Pro skis. We've ran those for years. A Mountain Fit lightweight hood. Again, we've ran those on our superchargers ever since we started in 2015 running superchargers. Let's see what else. TKI, another awesome sponsor of ours. Tom, he was with us from day one. We've always been running his belt drives. That's what this sled has. This has also a rail brace kit and billet bogey wheels. And also a brake reservoir protector. Rob was notorious for breaking brake reservoirs out in the mountains.
Nice.
So
Nice.
and his brake lever. I'm trying to think.
So while you're talking there, I'm actually going to drop the image of the sled and just show everybody, like, you are in the garage with the sled at the moment, right? They can't see the whole thing there, but they can see that sitting behind you is the sled that I was just showing everybody the image of. It's awesome that you're able to kind of sit there and just talk through it as we go through this. It just kind of makes it that much more meaningful.
Yeah. It's, just driving this into my garage, I was, it feels weird. It feels like
a little emotional.
Like I should.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful sled. Rob wanted to build a black and gold sled years ago. And for multiple reasons, he was shut down on that. And after Rob passed, Kim, his wife, found the picture of, we'd always use race cars or, different various pictures as inspiration for these builds that we would start up. And Kim found the picture of the race car that was his inspiration. He said he wanted it to be, clean and sexy looking,
Yeah.
and so yeah. And then I can't say enough good about our good friend Jason Nethercott. He and I one night, the only part that I got involved with on this sled was he and I we gutted it, and we stripped it down to nothing, to the bulkhead one night, and we were having fun. We were just tossing stuff in a gold powder coat box and a black powder coat box, and we just Artie Cat donated the sled. It's a brand new sled, and we tore it down to nothing, and Ace Powder Coating, again, all these sponsors of ours are good friends now. They're not just companies that sponsor us. We have personal relationships with all these guys, and Garth was gracious, and he said, I don't care. I'll powder coat the whole snowmobile. And so
That's awesome.
so everything that we could think of, we took off and sent to powder coat. When you open the hood on this thing, there's nothing that's not been touched.
That's awesome. And by the way, I think I forgot to put it in the original header of the post in here, but I just dropped it in the comments now as you were talking, is the link that folks can tap on right now, literally right now, and anytime after they watch the show, after the show, you can do it also. You can go in there and you can actually purchase chances to win this sled that we just talked about. So it's an AIARE is helping you, kind of working with a website that put all this together. It's awesome the way that kind of the whole community is pulled together, and Avalanche safety and education is what AIARE is all about. It's what you guys are trying to get the message out there about, and then also raising some money for Rob's family. It's a great cause, and that last I looked, it was already over 129,000. I haven't even looked today to see what it's at. Let me look quick right now. I'll see what it says it's at. So.
I just looked before this, and it was like 135.
Yeah, so we're at 135 right now. That's awesome. 135, 300, and climbing. And so by the time go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, we were able to get this snowmobile up to the Rimshaw race, to the hill climb race in Acton, Wyoming this weekend, and the announcer, one of them is a fellow racer and a good friend of ours, and he was blowing up this, the sled and the sweepstakes and everything, and I think over the weekend it went up $3,000 just at that Rimshaw race. But
that's awesome.
I gotta give a shout out to Riley, Rob's son. He took Mod King of the Hill, semi-pro Mod King of the Hill at the Acton Hill Climb. So it was pretty emotional time. We had Rob's sled on display, and Riley, did.
That's awesome.
I'm getting chills just talking about it. Yeah. He won the Mod King. Definitely Rob was down there up looking over his run, and
pulling his skis probably the whole time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, crazy, just awesome sled, and great, cause that we're raising some money for. And I know part of what we wanted to do tonight too, David, was talk a little bit about the day of the accident, right? I know my understanding is you were there the day of the accident, and if you want to kind of take us back to maybe the morning of, and kind of talk us into what happened that led up to the moment of the incident, and anything that you're willing to share, and then ultimately we'll turn around and we'll share what did we learn from this, and what can we share with everybody else, and what are your recommendations to make sure other people are being conscious and thinking about things like avalanche awareness and safety, and beacon checks and all those type of things we'll get to here in a little bit. But the floor is yours, sir, right? I mean, as much time as you need to tell this story, it's all yours, buddy.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be able to do this, because I know Rob would want the true story to come out, and just so people can learn from our mistakes. And I think we're like many other snowmobilers, and and we're human. So 2 weeks prior to April 3rd, Rob had started talking about going on this big ride. And it's funny, because the first day I ever went snowmobiling with Rob, clear back in 2006 probably, we went, in this area, and it was the biggest ride I'd ever been on before. And I joked with Rob as the sun was going down and we were still a ways from home from the truck. And I said, geez, you just told me to bring lunch. You didn't tell me to bring dinner. And I mean, I was starving, and that's what kicked off our relationship. It was an adrenaline rush that whole ride, and I loved it. And it was a great start to our relationship. But and as we started riding more, we started going that we didn't go as far back into the hills as that first ride that we went on. Rob and we had talked, and we were like, we can have as much fun 2 miles from the truck. We don't need to go into that big, scary country. And so fast forward, 2 weeks before the accident, the Avalanche, Rob, he asked me, he's like, let's go. Like, we haven't been back there for 10 years, Dave. Like, let's go. A bunch of our buddies haven't seen that country, and the snow's safe right now. And so, I was like, yeah, I guess, we've got friends that they ride that area every week, at least once a week. And that was what was in the back of my mind. I was like, those guys, they get away with it. We'll be all right. And we haven't been back there forever. So it was actually my anniversary, and I was running, trying to get stuff out to get in the truck to go riding, and had Rob on speakerphone as I was grabbing stuff, and my wife heard Rob's voice, and she said, "You be careful, Rob. It's my anniversary." And Rob's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take care of your boy, and everything will be all right." And that was the last time my wife and Rob got to talk to each other. But so we got to the trailhead, and we all drive separate. And this particular trailhead, there's kind of like 2 parking lots, and I parked in the lower parking lot where Rob usually parked, and it's a little bit bigger, so for guys with trailers and stuff. And a little bit later, I see Rob smoke past to the upper parking lot. No big deal. That's normal. And so I got ready with a couple of our other buddies at that lower parking lot. And as I left the truck, I got about 10, 15 feet away from my truck, and I thought to myself, oh, I forgot to turn my beacon on. So I go to turn my beacon on, and my batteries were actually dead. Wow. And so I yell over to Bruce, and I'm like, hey, do you have an extra beacon? My batteries are dead. And he said, yeah, I do. So we go to his trailer, and I'm like, well, here, before I need to use my beacon that I'm familiar with, so let's just take the batteries out of your spare beacon and put them in mine. So we did. And this whole time, I'm thinking to myself, Rob's gonna give me a hard time about being late, and I've got a great excuse now for being late. So I get my beacon turned on. I head up to the upper parking lot, and Rob's up there. And he doesn't give me a hard time. He didn't say anything about being late, and so I didn't get the chance to say that. And I, there's 100 woulda, coulda, shouldas on this whole day, and that was one of them. I wish, and one of our mistakes is that morning we didn't do a beacon check. We had in the past, I'll be honest, we didn't do a beacon check every single ride. We would do one occasionally, and I'm here to tell everybody, that's something that has to happen every single ride. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's something that was our big mistake that day. But we did have a meeting, that morning, and we talked about where we were going, and we talked about the Avalanche report, and we all determined that we would go on this ride, and it was a big ride. It was, quite a ways back into the hills, areas that we've all been before, and we were all comfortable with going. And in hindsight, had we have read the Avalanche report a little more in depth, the report for that day said in the afternoon, south-facing slopes could potentially slide. And that was something that we should have heeded a little bit more to. But so we all take off, and we ride, and we're having a great time. and we get to this high mountain lake that we've been to numerous times, and we kind of hang out there and we eat lunch, and we leave there after a little while, and we head up, and Rob's always in the lead, and I'm right behind him, and I remember he stopped, and I stopped right next to him, and well, actually, I was a little ways away from him. He snapped a picture of me, and we were just kind of just talking and waiting for everybody to show up, and that was kind of the norm. Rob and I kind of up in the front waiting for everybody else, and we'd just have some good one-on-one time there and stuff. And a little further on, we went up and found a cool jump, and Rob was shooting pictures of Riley hitting it. I was in a different spot, shooting Riley hitting it. So we had fun shooting some pictures that day, and really that was the only time we really took the camera out, was just for Rob to shoot some photos of Riley. And we kept riding on, and we kind of started our loop back. We were just this big loop that we were going to do, and as we were riding back, now we were starting to come up, drive our snowmobiles up these south-facing slopes, and we dropped down into the first basin, and the snow was fine. There truly hadn't been any signs, no womping, no shooting cracks or anything that showed signs of the snow moving prior to this. And so then, like I say, we dropped into the first basin, we climbed out of it, and then we dropped into the second. And all the while, we're being very cautious, one at a time on all the slopes, going down, going up. And we all dropped down into the second basin. And it's Rob and I were always kind of racing for the lead. But I know, Rob's older than me, and he knows the country a little bit better than me. I better just let him lead. So we were all at the bottom of this hill, and Rob climbs up it. And he gets about 3/4 of the way up to the top, and you can see probably 20 yards above Rob, it cracks, and the avalanche starts to come down. I think at that point, Riley, did a big motion like this, and as Rob was kind of turning out, we're pretty sure Rob saw Riley, and I've seen Rob in the past where the avalanche, would cut, and I've seen Rob outrun an avalanche before, and I think that was his plan, just like that's your only option. And the problem is there was this steep ledge at the bottom of the hill, at the base of it, and right as Rob for a second was out of the avalanche, and then he kind of had to jump back into the avalanche. And as he jumped into the avalanche, it made him go airborne. And then as he was airborne, he kind of jumped off of this ledge. It wasn't a cliff, but it was straight up. So the slide comes down. We lose sight of Rob as he comes off that vertical section, and we all started our snowmobiles, got out of the way, and as the avalanche came to a rest, I was ready. I don't remember what everyone else was doing. We were all just getting our beacons out, and I was walking across the avalanche, and I just thought to myself, give me 2 minutes, buddy. Like, we've practiced for this. I'm comfortable. This wasn't the first time I had been involved with an avalanche rescue. The very, very first time I'd ever been in one was back in '06, and I don't have time to tell that story, but I wasn't involved with that avalanche. I wasn't there. A guy had come riding up to us looking for help, so I had like 5 minutes to prepare myself, which in turn, all it did was made my adrenaline through the roof. So the very first time I was ever involved with an avalanche, my adrenaline was so far through the roof that I was a mess. I couldn't put my probe together. I couldn't, I was shaking and stuff. In contrast, on Rob's, I was calm and collected and ready and ready to go to work. And as I walked across the slide, I'm not getting a signal anywhere, and everybody else we're not getting a signal anywhere, and you can imagine the panic in our eyes as we're searching an avalanche. And we've had Rob would instigate parties where, middle of the summer, in the fall, we would just go to someone's house and have a barbecue, and we would hide beacons, as part of the party, and we would compete, who could find the beacons the fastest. And a lot of those friends that were at those parties were on this ride with us that day, and so we all knew how to use the equipment, and we got a couple false readings. Beacons do funny things when there's 10 of you searching, and we thought, we got a signal in one spot, and so we dug and probed in that area, and come to find out there's nothing there. And we knew that we needed to focus on the area where Rob's sled was. Our experience and our training that we've learned and know is typically the body's close to the snowmobile, somewhere in that vicinity. So we started, below the snowmobile and started working our way up. And unfortunately, at this point, we realized his beacon just was off. It wasn't working. And so when I say we started below his sled, we just started probing. In a shoulder to shoulder, as a team, just combing our way up the mountainside, and unfortunately that's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. That's a slow way to try to find somebody. After there was times during the search that I remember thinking to myself, I'm so mad that I've pushed horses or snowmobiles or dirt bikes or a truck, whatever it is that I'm using that day. I push it to the full potential, and here I am pushing my body to the max, and I'm ticked at myself that I can't work any faster. And I just want to be doing what I'm doing, but multiply it by 10. And there was a point that when we were searching, that the thought crossed my mind. So two things. We never gave up hope. We knew Rob was a fighter, and I kept yelling, I've heard of guys living after an hour, even though it'd been an hour. I was like, we never slowed down. We just kept probing as fast as we could. And, but, at one point during the slide, I thought to myself, there's a chance we may not find him tonight. And that was a scary, scary thought. And it was shortly after that, Bruce was to my side, right next to me, and he probed Rob, and we immediately we started digging, and he was probably down 4 or 5 feet, and yeah, it's I don't like going there, I guess. Those images are never going to leave me, and it's hard to talk about what we saw there. But we got them uncovered, and our Rob's longtime racing pal, the guy that he raced with before I came into the picture, Steve Hill, knew CPR, and he started doing CPR on him. And after a long time, we finally had to. It was starting to get dark, and we finally had to give up the CPR, and then we had to decide what we were going to do. At first, none of us wanted to leave. We we were all wet and exhausted and completely smoked, and but we didn't want to leave our buddy in the mountains. And about right then it started blowing and snowing, and you know, I kind of said to the group, I said, I can make it at night, guys, like no problem, you know, we'll be fine. But with those early spring storms, sometimes they last a couple of days. I said, you know, Rob wouldn't want us to be fools, and you know, who knows how long this storm's going to last. So it wasn't my choice, but we all collectively decided that we would leave, and we covered Rob up, and we headed out of the mountains. The thing that I have the hardest time with is, I know Rob was the dang luckiest guy in the world, and I know if the tables were turned, he would have found me, and that's what gives me, that's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Is knowing that I wasn't able to save him, and so we rode out that night. The next morning, I had to drive to Idaho Falls to get in the helicopter to take the paramedics and stuff in there. And Rob was such a tough guy that I as I was flying in that airplane, in that helicopter, I thought to myself, there's a 40% chance that Rob came to and got his fire starting stuff out of his backpack. He's ticked off, pissed at me, you know, and he's going to be sitting there around a fire. And I mean, I honestly, like, that it wouldn't have surprised me, because Rob, that's how tough Rob was, and that's how much of a fighter Rob was. So yeah, I took him right to the site. We landed, and yeah, I'm just here to tell people, no one ever wants to ride their buddy's snowmobile out of the mountains. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. I've never ridden a snowmobile with tears running down my face, and I'd have to stop, and I couldn't even see because I was crying so bad, you know, and you know, what we learned in the AIARE course, the first day, the first 20 minutes of our class, is that any high risk activity has a checklist. Yep. Be it flying in an airplane, the pilot has a checklist that he has to go through every morning, and that's something that we all as snowmobilers need to have, is the checklist, that we do the beacon check in the morning, that we check and make sure we have all the proper avalanche equipment. One thing I forgot to mention in the story is, a lot of people have asked, they said, well, was Rob wearing an avalanche backpack, and did he have time, would he have had time to pull on his avalanche backpack? And, you know, he did have his backpack on, but he didn't pull his backpack. And as I watched him, I would have done the same thing that he did. He didn't have time to pull it. It was go time. You know, he had to ride, and the avalanche was that quick onto him. There was no time for him to pull, because, you know, as soon as he was turning out of it, and then he was jumping into it and off of that ledge, there just was no time for him to, unfortunately, to pull his backpack. So yeah, I mean, sometimes the smarter thing is to, you know, grab a handful of throttle and try to maneuver your way around it, right? And right. Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing that I know you alluded to earlier, that, you know, even in that situation, right, whether it was, you know,
you in that first avalanche, that you had experienced before Rob's avalanche, you said that you were just a mess, right? Like you were just adrenaline was pumping stuff too. And, I've shared the story a few times of, I've come across a car accident on my way to work one time. It was back in 2015. And like, I literally could not, on my iPhone, I could not dial 911. Like I was just like I was watching some poor woman die in front of me. There was other people there trying to help and stuff too. And like, you just don't know how you will react as a human being in an emergency situation. You just don't, right? You practice muscle memory. That helps a lot. But frankly, until you're in that moment, you just don't know how you're gonna act and react, right? And it's no different whether you're in the middle of an avalanche. Will you be conscious enough to think of pulling a bag? You may not, right? And that's
Right.
that's why so many, and that's the part that I think globally we see a lot of, people who are very naive around the fact that like, oh, I've got a beacon, a shovel, a probe, and an avalanche backpack, I'm good. But frankly, they've never been to an avalanche class. They never practiced with it. Like I was on a ride today where I was with a group of people, and there's this a couple of folks that I ride with that I've encouraged them to get avalanche beacons, and I kind of require them to wear their radios and all those things when they come out and ride with us. And watching one of them go through trying to figure out how to switch their beacon from search back and forth, I'm just like, we rode completely out of avalanche terrain today. Like we picked a parking lot, we picked terrain and everything because it was high avalanche risk here today in Washington, and we eluded all avalanche risk. Like we literally were on the flats and upper meadows and all that stuff too. But like, had I had a good buddy who I was going to go into avalanche terrain with, like I don't know that I would feel good about someone who doesn't know how to switch their beacon to search back and forth, or just because they have equipment, they think they're good, right? It's really about that practice and that education, which is part of why we're sharing this story. Is there's so many pieces of this puzzle, and I've taken some notes along here. I'll kind of walk them through with you too, but I want you to be able to kind of keep sharing whatever part of the story you have or any other reflections you have. So
Yeah. That's about it as far as the story. One thing that I think we all as snowmobilers can do is, and it's a little bit of an eye opener, like you just mentioned, is just spontaneously at the start of a ride, just say, hey, there's been an avalanche. Let's see how quick we can get all of our equipment out.
yeah,
In our AIARE class, they did that, and right then, we're all competitive guys, and your adrenaline goes, right then and there, and it's kind of an eye opener to see, just how effective you are at getting your shovel and your beacon and your probe out and ready, it's all something that we can all practice and figure out, just the right way to have everything situated in your backpack. So in those moments when seconds count, we're ready. So that's just one little snippet of what we can do, but that's stuff that needs to happen every ride.
Yeah.
So.
And I think the other thing too is it's not only having the equipment. I think a lot of people think just because I've got this avalanche backpack that I'm safe, or because I have this beacon that I'm safe, but it's knowing how to use that stuff and knowing that the tools that you have are right for the job. We learned that when we were out, a lot of the guys that we had with us, their probes weren't working properly. They weren't locking in place. That would have been totally inefficient. Some people didn't know how to use their beacons, and you think that it's just a couple of switches, but there's more to it. Understanding how to read it and how to actually operate that beacon it means way more than just having that thing in your pocket. And one thing that I took away from that AIARE 1 class was, you have all this equipment on you thinking that it's going to protect yourself, but it's really, that equipment's there to help protect the people that you're riding with too. And so if you're with a guy that doesn't have the right shovel or doesn't have the right beacon, your first instinct might be like, whatever, who cares about him? But it should be a red flag. That should be an alarm, because that shovel is going to dig me out. That probe's going to probe me. So those are two things I think that are really, really, really important for anybody that's traveling in the backcountry to understand. It's not just the tools you have, but it's how you actually use them too.
Sorry. On that same line, the first avalanche that I was ever involved with, again, I didn't see the avalanche happen. A guy came and recruited us for help. And as I got settled down, I got my probe out. I didn't know anything about probes back then, and I bought a probe. I thought all probes were the same.
Yeah.
And the probe I got wasn't long enough. The avalanche was so deep that my probe wasn't hitting the ground. And that's a horrible feeling when you're probing and you can't dismiss that area because you don't know what's below your probe if you don't hit the ground. So after that avalanche, I went home and I researched on the internet the longest avalanche probe money could buy.
Yeah.
And I found the longest one, and that's the one that's always been in my backpack ever since.
That's awesome.
So yeah, the tools are critical. So
yep, nope, absolutely. So there's a few other things you mentioned in your story that I took some notes on here too, and one is around reading the avalanche forecast fully, right? And I think that's another very common mistake that I see, people generally make. Like this is a widespread, and I've witnessed it over and over again, where people will look at an avalanche forecast and say like, oh, it's red today, oh, it's orange today, oh, it's yellow today, or oh, it's green today, right? And that's all they're looking for, is they just go on their flash up and like, oh, I got a color, right? And there's things going on around the country right now. And I'll speak specifically about the Pacific Northwest where I'm at up here, but I think this is pretty broad and widespread this year, which is why we're seeing so many issues across the country right now. Is speaking specifically about the Pacific Northwest, is we have what's right now called a persistent weak layer, right? It's a deep slab, and there's this weak layer of snow in there that, is probably a month and a half old now, that continues to get piled on and piled on and piled on. And it used to be, 6 inches below the surface. Now it's 6 to 8 feet below the surface, right? And as time goes on, it gets harder to trigger, but the catastrophe that would come of it if it gets triggered goes higher and higher, right? Because an 8-foot slab breaking versus a 6-inch slab breaking can have two different levels of devastation, when it comes to taking out trees or injuring people, those kind of things. And there's things that when you look at the avalanche color today, right, it might be yellow, it might be orange, moderate or considerable, right? But if you really don't understand the problems, right, like, so David, you said that if you would have read a little further, you would have seen that south-facing slopes were the ones that were prone to slide, likely because of solar radiation, right, and the slope heating up through the day and that kind of thing, right? And that's the thing too, is, generally speaking, mornings, things are a little more firm and solid and firmed up. Late in the afternoons, that's when things get warmer, especially as you get more into spring conditions, those kind of things. And again, sometimes just a little bit of a full detailed read of everything in the forecast. Like my wife and I, my wife's been riding with me almost, every, like literally this season, every day we've ridden together. And our routine is I'll check the forecast the night before, but we'll read it again in the truck as we're driving. Like I'm driving up and she'll read the forecast to me, like literally word for word out loud as we're going up the mountain. We'll look at what the avalanche problems are, if it's a, wind slabs, if it's, whatever the different, different problems are. But it's a really good habit, and it is habits, right? And when you go through an AIARE level 1, there's actually a book that you can get. It's your backcountry safety guide, and there's a daily log in there where you can jot those things down. And sometimes that's better for people to be able to read, jot down their notes. What are they seeing? And then a big thing is, planning the terrain that you're willing to tackle today based on the training that you've all received. Like a lot of folks that I've just recently, I did my AIARE 1 again here just like 2 weeks ago out in Sealy Lake, Montana. And we have a lot of our folks that we ride together here in our local club that went together. And, one of the things that's, there is like, deciding like, okay, based on the avalanche conditions today, before we even see the terrain, what level of risk do we feel that we're comfortable with based on our current group and our skill level and our avalanche awareness knowledge, and based on the current avalanche forecast, right? And so it's kind of interesting because it's one of those things that's reversed from the snowmobile community to the ski community, right? The non-motorized community has been doing avalanche training and AIARE level 1s for years and years and years, right? It's still fairly new, 5-10 years now that snowmobilers have really taken this level of training seriously and getting into that. And one of the things that a skier group would do, and some things that a lot of the Avalanche, motorized forecaster, users are doing now too, is like, where are we not going today? Like, just at the beginning of the day saying, like, you know what, based on today's conditions, I'm not even going to go park at that snow park. We're going to go to a different snow park where I know I can manage the terrain a little easier, those kind of things, right? And so these are all very just general comments of, going into the Avalanche forecast in more detail and getting that area training, right?
Yeah, if we again, just to touch on what you just told us is, if we would have read that forecast a little bit more in depth and just planned our day a little differently, if we would have left earlier in the morning, or even just spent less time having lunch,
Mm-hmm.
and just completed our ride earlier, and stayed away from those south facing slopes in the afternoon,
Yep.
we would have been fine. So
Yep.
again, there's all these coulda, woulda, shouldas. So
Yeah, and that's the thing, Dave. I mean, having lived through, my own fair share of tragedies in life, and it's we all have a story of some kind. And now we've heard your story, right? And I've on previous episodes shared stories of a sister who committed suicide and killed herself, right? I was 10 years old, she was 15 years old. I was at school that day and I came home, and it's like one of those things where it's like, it's the same thing. We all go through this, like, wow, what if I had done something different that day? Or what if my mom and dad would have heard what my sister said? But here's the thing is, like, you know what? We do the best we can with the knowledge that we have at the time. In our life experience is what helps us all become better, like better human beings, smarter, and to be able to share these experiences. And there's frankly, there is no reason it happened other than that it just happened, right? And that day, could have things happen? You never know, right? And I look at it as, man, there's, I think of like the Iron Dog race that's happening up in Alaska this last week, right? I've got a good friend, David Wagner, who's racing up there, and his friend who he was racing with injured his wrist and couldn't finish the race. And the way my mind now is wired is this idea of like, well, geez, it sucks that they couldn't finish the race, but maybe it prevented a more serious accident that could have happened later in the day, right? And it's just one of those things that you just, your experiences tell you that as human beings on this planet are not in control of our own destiny always, right? And sometimes there's things that are that just happen, right? And we can't control that. And all we can control is how we respond. And I would tell you, David, based on everything you shared tonight, how you responded in the moment is amazing, right? Like, you're an amazing friend, you're an amazing leader. All the things that you guys did in that moment and took it right to the end, to put yourselves out there and to some degree putting yourselves at risk, in avalanche terrain that just slid. Like, just know that I'm confident in hearing your story tonight that you did everything in your power you could to respond to the incident the best you could, right? And to hear that you guys had been practicing ahead of time and stuff too. And, I'll share with you guys too, is like, as much as I sit on here and I talk about avalanche safety and education and kind of be the messenger, right? Like, I personally have gone up on the mountain and at the end of the day went to turn my beacon off and realized, oh crap, my beacon wasn't on all day. And I'm flashing back through my head how it is that I made it through the day without any incidents, right? Like, I got lucky that day is really what it came down to. And, a lot of it is like, I got out of my routine, right? Like, things maybe just didn't flow the way I expected them to flow. And at that moment, like, we're all human. Like you said, we make mistakes and we don't, just things happen, right? And I would tell you that, I'm no different than Rob was. Like, we make mistakes, right? Like, we do it 100% of the time, 99.9% of the time we do it right. Sometimes that one time is all it takes. And, life is unforgiving sometimes. And, here we are at this point, honoring an incredible man and, his incredible family with this fundraiser, right? To try and be able to help get this message out, get the story out, to hopefully let it sink into everybody who is backcountry riding that you have to take this stuff seriously, right? It's like we go out there and have literally the times of our lives. I think of like the top 1% of my life has been on the top of a mountain on a snowmobile. Like, I mean, it is the best experience I can just ever have. But at the same time, it's the one experience that also, when we flirt with death and we flirt with risk, that's part of what makes us feel alive, I think, a little bit, right? Is why we push ourselves so hard to do these things. But to your point, the checklists and the training and all those things that we do to prepare for it, puts us in that mindset to prepare, to try to avoid the risks at all costs if we can. So, but at the same time, we just got to live our lives, right?
Right. Well, and Rob, he was such a great person. Um, and it's just in every aspect of it, a great friend and a great,
Yeah.
just a great human being, and so kind. And what helps me get through this experience, this horrible tragedy, is the night before he was talking at Jason Nethercott's parents' house and talking to all of them, and he full on said, he's like, if I die tomorrow, I'm okay with it. I've lived a good life. I've accomplished more in my life than most men dream of it.
Yeah.
And I'm okay. And that really helps me, because he said it. He said it. He was content with meeting his maker, if so be. And again, I think that's how kind Rob was.
Yeah.
Rob said that, in my, for me, I feel like that helps me to know that he's okay. And kind of a personal note, but a couple of weeks ago, I was driving to the first rimshot race of the year, and with Jason Nethercott, and he told me, he said I had a dream about Rob the other day, and I've had a couple of dreams about Rob, and they've been the most vivid, realistic dreams I've ever had. So much so that I wake up and I wake my wife up 2 a.m, and I have to tell her about my dream, type stuff. And Jason had the same experience, and he said Rob called me. Wow. And Jason's like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just calling to tell you that everything's all right, and I'm okay. And and then they just talked for 20 minutes, and I was just, well, what else did you say? I want to know, like, what else was said.
Yeah.
And Jason's like, I don't remember anything from the conversation aside from I'm all right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm bummed, because I truly don't feel like I've laughed as hard as I used to laugh, when I was with Rob, when I just, hysterically, tears running down my face, laughing at something he said. And it was so funny that sometimes in the middle of the night, I would be thinking about something that he had said that day, and I would be physically laughing so hard that I woke my wife up, and it kind of became an issue in my wife and I's marriage, where it would happen quite often, where I would wake up middle of the night laughing, and she would get so annoyed, hit me in the arm.
Oh, that's funny.
And she thought like I was half insane, because who does that? who wakes up in the middle of the night laughing? But that's how funny Rob was.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, incredible memories, and incredible man. I mean, again, I didn't know him personally. I think maybe at one time I had bumped into you guys at Heydays in passing, and I was just another fan walking by, I'm sure, right? But it's just crazy how, and it's coming through in the comments too. There's a lot of people, whether they've met Rob or not, were inspired by him, and now are inspired by your story tonight, Dave. That you've told, and at bare minimum, sharing this story tonight, it's Rob passing on his legacy, and also an opportunity for others to learn, right? Is in the story that you shared, is that, and that's the part I think there's basically, I think there's still a little bit of a stigma in the backcountry world, whether it's skier community, whether it's motorized community or whatever, where there's this, and it's rightly so, it's human instincts, right? There's this sensitivity around, oh my gosh, let's not talk about this right now, because we need to protect the family, the friends, and whoever was involved in the situation, because we don't want them to have unnecessary or undue stress on them, right? That's completely reasonable and understandable. But at the same time, getting out and sharing a story like this, even if it's a year later, right? We all can learn from these stories, and sometimes it's something as subtle. And I've had shows like this in the past where I've seen in the comments, and people have sent me private messages afterwards, and it could happen again tonight, right, where man, I bought a beacon. I've had it in my closet. I've meant to take it out, and I just have not. And God bless America, tonight is the night that I pull that beacon out. I put the batteries in it, and I commit to this day forward. I'm going to use it from now on and get trained, right? Like, I've had those experiences through episodes like this before too, and sharing these stories can definitely trigger people to, start making good decisions, go get the training and pursue it. And I'll take just the opportunity to share too that the partnership that we have with AIARE and how we all met through this. We had done a different sweepstakes, and that kind of drew the idea of this sweepstakes, and we all got introduced through AIARE. And the Live Large, it's through the name here, so Live Large University Scholarship Program is a program where people can make donations, they can buy Live Large merchandise and all those things, and all of those proceeds, 100% of them, go to AIARE, the nonprofit, and they use those funds in that motorized for the motorized community exclusively, right? That money goes towards educating future Avalanche motorized instructors. There's recreational scholarships available as well too, and really the only thing we're asking people to do is to make sure that if they're applying for those scholarships, they are investing in the community, right? That's 100% what it's about. And what this whole platform, what this whole show exists for, is to just drive this same kind of a message of awareness. And so I'm honored to have you come on and tell the story, because it's so aligned with my personal goals and what I've been trying to accomplish in the motorized community here.
Yeah, it's been an honor, and I mean, that's what I've been trying to do, with the beacon check stations and with this sweepstakes sled, and we're going to do spring fling with Tadizzle,
Yep.
and try to honor Rob there. Just try to honor my buddy as best I can, and do everything as big as possible, because that was what Rob wanted. He liked things to be big and fun and exciting, and he was always the life of the party. And I just try to honor a great man. So
Yeah, and just a minute or two ago, I dropped the link again into the chat, and I'll go back in and I'll put it in the actual body of the message that goes out too. But again, if you guys haven't already, please share this out. I know we're an hour, believe it or not, guys, we're an hour and 10 minutes into this broadcast, right? Where did time go, right? Time flies when you're just in depth in an amazing story and just helping get the word out there. So, any final words, Ben? And then I'll come back to you, Dave, for any final words, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, final words, I guess, on the on the sweepstakes. Like you said, the link will be there, but it's you don't have to donate a lot. It's $25 to get your name in to enter to win this thing, and we're actually going to be announcing the winner live at our Brand Live event on March 3rd. So
Coming up fast.
It's coming up quick. We did extend it. It was originally on March 1st, but
Okay.
it's now on March 3rd. So really encourage everybody to go on there and donate. But then, yeah, just on this topic in general, if you are riding in the backcountry, I think, after taking this course, I think it should be a requirement before you hop on a sled and plan on going into the backcountry to get at least a level 1 AIARE class. I don't want to speak for Dave, but I think he'd probably agree that I'm not going to ride with anybody that doesn't have that kind of education. It's just not worth the risk for me. It's not worth the risk for them. So my goal is to make this just standard practice. This should be like getting your driver's license. If you want to go into the backcountry and ride with us, get your certification, get educated.
I love it. Thank you for that, Ben. I appreciate your time tonight. Dave,
Absolutely.
any other final words or thoughts you want to share before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Ben just said. My idea that, I was stoked that Climb, they got their backcountry team, and they all got AIARE certified level 1. And after Rob passed, I was like, I always try to be an optimistic guy and look at the positive, and I was like, I hope we can, as pro athletes in the snowmobiling, make this the cool thing to do. The popular thing to do is to get level 1 certified at least. After taking the level 1 course, I was like, there's no way, no how I would ever let my son ride in the backcountry in avalanche terrain without a level 1 certification. And that goes for everybody. And just like Ben said, when I go as somebody that's not level 1 certified, I'm a little more on edge, because I've been involved in 4 avalanche rescues, and I still learned a lot in that level 1 course. And I think I think Rob would be honored to know that the people the consensus in the snowmobile industry is to get your training and to try to make a horrible situation, a positive, and try to save somebody, so.
Yep. So here's an idea somebody dropped in the comments, and I'll just throw it out there. And you guys being affiliated with ArcticCat, something you guys can chew on is, Rowdy Yates is asking, what do you think about manufacturers giving discounts for AviGear on the purchase of a new mountain sled? So when you buy a new mountain sled, maybe there's an opportunity through a local dealer through some kind of a program. So obviously, I don't expect you to be able to answer anything like that on the spot. Those kind of ideas obviously have to go up, but not a horrible idea. And here's the thing. I'll play good cop, bad cop here, guys. Right? Is like, think about it from this standpoint. Right? Is like, we spend. I'm just going to throw out some round numbers here. Like, if you go buy a new sled, you're going to spend probably close to 15 to now almost 18 grand, depending on what you're buying. Right? Like, it just their sleds are all over the board on pricing. But let's say it's safely you're going to spend 15 grand on a new sled. By the time you buy a $300 to $500 helmet, you buy a $400 jacket, $400 bibs, or a $700 monosuit, $200 boots. Your gloves are another $80. Your goggles are $100 to $50 to $100. You've got your Avi pack you just spent $1,000 on. Like an Avalanche class, and somebody asked in here, how much is an Area 1 class is? They range. I've seen them as low as $380 up to as high as, I think, close to $500, $450 to $500 on the high end. It depends on the area they're at, where they're located, the instructor. Keep in mind is, AIARE doesn't set the pricing, the providers do. So AIARE is providing the training to the instructors, and there's kind of, average. It's all competitive to some degree as well too, pricing and where people are at. But, let's call it $400 to $450 on average you're going to spend for an AIARE level 1 class. When you think about the fact that I just listed off over $20,000 investment that a lot of people have, and frankly, even on the low end, if you pick up a used machine and used gear, you're still in for $5 grand, right? So for less than 10% of your overall investment, you are still getting the training that you need. It's like, think about if we were to just turn over the keys to the cars to our teenagers. I've got a 16 or a 17 and an 18-year-old, right, at my house, or a 19-year-old. And like, I think of when they're 16 years old, if we were to just hand the keys over the car without them going through training or driver's license and all those kind of things, to go through their driving school, what would we be doing, right? And so to put anybody on a snowmobile in the backcountry that hasn't gone through that kind of training on, the risk assessment that's out there, you're right. It's the word that always comes to mind is just ignorance, right? It's the idea that they don't know what they don't know, and I think that's where the messages from, pro riders like Dave here, Ben, ArcticCat, as a manufacturer, you get these clothing manufacturers, you get everybody on board, and I see it happening, over and over again now. And I'm really proud of, as an industry, I feel like even from a year or two ago to where we've come just now, it's amazing to see the we've gone from maybe 10% to 20%, but we still got that 80% to go, right? Where we all want to get to the point where we get everybody on board and everybody's singing from the same sheet of music. So Awesome. Any other final thoughts? Otherwise, I'll wrap it up, guys. All
really
right.
appreciate you having us on here, John.
All right. Well, the way I wrap up every show is I remind everybody, what everything we talked about tonight is that live large, right? It's live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others, right? And that's exactly what we've done tonight. And I'll just say thank you all, and God bless you. Have a great night.